Hello, everybody, and welcome from the Croisette, where we're here at the final day of full competition films at the Cannes Film Festival. My name is Hugo Emmerzael. I'm your host at Celebrating Cinema, and I'm joined by a very special guest and a very dear friend of mine, Savina Petkova, film critic as well, based in London. Savina, first of all, we're at the very end of the festival, so I want to ask, how are you doing? How are you feeling?
That very underrated question, because people usually start any kind of conversation at any time of day or night here in Cannes with, so what have you liked from the festival?
Have you seen this film? Do you think it's good? Is it good or not? Is it
So
overrated?
what's gonna win for the Palme d'Or? And nobody asks each other how they are, so
But
I'm
how
very
are you,
grateful.
seriously?
Yeah, I'm good. I think I'm exhausted and exhilarated at the same time, but I think everybody can relate, right?
I think so too, because being in Cannes is kind of immersing yourself in the world of cinema to such an insane degree that, like you said, suddenly watching some Japanese film or yesterday some Chinese experimental film becomes the most important thing that you can do on a day that everybody wants to discuss. To be honest, it's sometimes kind of demented, to be honest, to place so much importance on cinema. But I'm very happy that you're joining because we share a lot of Cannes memories as well. As a
We
matter of
do.
fact, we became very good friends after we met in 2019. So we've been coming to the festival for quite some years. Can you talk maybe a bit more about your personal relationship with the festival? How do you enjoy being in Cannes in general?
Yeah, I love this question because Cannes is the place of ambivalence for me. I think I've had the most of my hardest times here as a journalist, but also the most rewarding experiences of my career and personal life as well. As you mentioned, we met here and we've had this beautiful friendship built on mutual love for cinema, and just the energy that Cannes can sustain is really, really, really impressive. So I'm in awe, but also terrified by it at the same time.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You're stepping in the belly of the beast every year.
Yeah, and I think you've been here for much longer than I have. So does it get any easier?
No, this is my 9th time in Cannes, and it becomes a bit more fluid in the sense that you don't feel too much stress about navigating things that a lot of people are worried about, like how do I get a ticket to this film? What's gonna happen on this day? How do I combine the interviews and the writing and the things? But yeah, it's just every year shocking how overwhelming and exhausting and exhilarating it can be at the same time, right?
Yeah, as you said, like everything becomes the most important thing. Every scene in a film, every line, every needle drop becomes the most important bit of the day of your life at the moment. It's very difficult to explain it to people that have never been here, and I cherish the bubble, but I'm skeptical of it. And at the tail end of the festival, I'm quite happy to have the time to just dwell in the films and the memories of the films, because I feel like it's so saturated, as we talked about earlier yesterday, that is, yeah, watching too many films in a row and also placing this huge importance on every one of them doesn't really allow you always the space to unpack.
Exactly.
So I'm also very happy that we have this chance now to talk about stuff and unpack it together, because that's what I've missed in the past couple of days.
What a perfect segue to actually also talk about the films, because I assume that's why some people will listen. And we decided it would be very easy in a main competition with more than 20 films, which are all on various degrees incredibly important, quote unquote, films, right? To discuss everything, and that would be great as well, but also somewhat overwhelming. So we decided to pick two films that are very close to our heart here at the festival, that we hopefully will take with us and that will linger and will stay with us for a long time to come. One of them screened quite recently and the other quite early at the festival, so we're also bookmarking basically our time here on the Croisette.
It's true.
And I think it might be good to start with the film that screened a couple of days ago, which is Joachim Trier's Sentimental Value. A film that raised already a lot of high expectations because Trier has been at the festival many times. His previous film, The Worst Person in the World, got a
Best
Best
actress.
Actress for Renate Reinsve, if I pronounce it correctly.
You do?
And now he's back with a film that really seems to vie for the top prize, the Palme d'Or, in almost every sense of the word, because it's a bit more, let's say, intellectually ambitious. It's a bit bigger. It's about acting and cinema and the ways that making art conflict and clash maybe also with how to keep a family and how to keep your family connections close and healthy and sustainable. So there's all of these big ideas that resonate very strongly in the context of a film festival like this. But this is me talking on the intellectual level. What I think is most interesting about, well, the title also kind of suggested, Sentimental Value, is the emotional undercurrents of the film. Maybe it would be nice that if you can first share your first impressions of Joachim Trier's newest work, and also talk a little bit about your relationship with this film, because I think arguably you know a lot about the work of Trier. You've immersed yourself quite deeply in it. So what was this film like for you?
I think I tried to keep my expectations low because I've spent so much time immersed in Trier cinema and his relationship with Oslo, which is a very dear city to my heart. I've spent a good amount of time of my life and living in Norway. I feel very close and connected to what Norwegianness is, all these slippery slopes and repression, but also grasping for emotional connection, but not knowing how exactly. And I think these characteristics have been very important for all his characters, and we see them play out in this film as well. But as I said, I was trying not to hype myself up too much because Renate did a fantastic job in The Worst Person in the World, and that's a film that it's very, very dear to my heart. And when I read the synopsis of this film, that it's going to be about intergenerational relationships, family, home, I was wondering if it's gonna work for me because I'm a sucker for the melodrama
Yes, me
of a
too.
couple, but this is kind of like the melodrama of a family.
Yes.
So it really strikes the chord, like your soul is going to be singing.
I was always quite, let's say, on the fence with Trier, to be honest. The Worst Person in the World was a film that I enjoyed, but I didn't connect to very strongly. His previous films, to various degree, had the same problem for me. And when this film opens, from this essay that a young, protagonist has written on, like, what is it, elementary school or something, about the house and about the family from the perspective of the house and what it means for a house to either be filled with noise, with laughter, with the stomping of feet, but also, of course, with the shouts and the screams of mom and dad fighting and all of these things. I was already kind of like, okay, wait a minute, something is maybe happening here. We have this gorgeous location, this beautiful mansion, standalone house, and we immediately get such a unique approach maybe into this story. And it gradually and slowly warmed up to me even more and more and more, to the point that I thought, no, this is actually a great film. This is maybe my favorite film of his. How would you, at this point, place the film or slot the film in your appreciation of Trier's cinema?
Yeah, it's moving up pretty high, I think. The more I think about it, because it's a film that dwells with you.
Yes.
It's a film that works its way into your heart in a very beautiful way, not in a manipulating, seeding kind of way. Quite the opposite. There's such an openness. And I was talking to a friend yesterday, and I remember him saying that he was very surprised by how open he felt by the film. He used the expression, something cracked open in me at one point, and I didn't realize when or how, and I can't pinpoint it. And I think that's a very good way to describe how this film works. That is, I guess there's something very freeing in the way that it connects these themes of artistry and family, and as you said, a creative life, the life of a creator, can be the thing that draws you away and splits you from your family, but also it can be the thing that brings you closer, which is what, in a way, that's that push and pull is what we witness in the film between Stellan Skarsgård's character and Renate Reinsve's character, father and daughter, which also father-daughter relationships, not that often on screen, right?
I was thinking about this as well, and this one is very interesting because Stellan Skarsgård, the father in the film, he plays an esteemed film auteur of the European kind. We see in the film a little snippet of a work that he has made before, which is kind of this Nazi story as well, some Second World War, children, refugees, things, serious big cinema, capital C stuff, right?
Long take, unblinking, focus on the close-up of the little girl just until you cannot handle it anymore.
Real European cinema. So he's this esteemed author and apparently, a real master of the craft. But then he is also, to some degree, an insufferable asshole who's completely estranged of his family, who leaves his two daughters just kind of like ultimately confused also after the passing of their mom, who is supposedly, I think, passed away from a form of dementia or memory illness. And then, of course, there needs to be some form of reconciliation, right? But then we have Renate Reinsve's character, who is a very prominent actress in a local theater, seems to be very promising and talented in her own rights, and is basically juggling with her own professional career and the way that she can balance the work life family kind of relationships, because her life seems to be quite successful but also strongly dysfunctional.
And lonely,
And
yeah.
lonely, exactly. There's just this piercing sense of loneliness to her character. Maybe it would be nice to talk first a bit about Renate's acting work, because it's also
Yeah.
a film about acting, so we already have this meta layer. But I thought she was incredibly strong, and this, especially this talent, this resilience that we can see in her, but then how it masks all this vulnerability and loneliness and this proneness to depression as well.
Yeah.
How would you
Exactly.
characterize it?
Yeah, I feel like she's such an actress full of plasticity, and her work is full of plasticity. Like, she can mold her presence, not necessarily her face or her gestures or her body, but somehow her presence as a whole can go between softness and hardness. It can harden for a second, and we can read it. She emanates this kind of glow or solidity. It's a very ephemeral kind of acting work. I wouldn't say it's that kind of methody, very close to you, that very apparent. But there's something in the way that her character, I think, also mirrors the way other people perceive her.
Yes.
I remember that scene at the very beginning where she's basically struggling to get on stage.
Yeah, it's like opening night of a new play. She's insanely anxious because she's the lead actress. She has to go on stage in a couple of minutes, and at some point she just plainly refuses and tries to escape multiple times and tries to find ways to make herself go on stage as well. And a very telling moment is when a colleague actor behind the scenes, with whom she has, let's say, some sexual and romantic tensions as well, she goes to him and basically either wants a bit of like a sexual trigger from him, like a kiss or something more. And when he isn't able to give her that, she's like, well, then just slap me. Then just slap my face, right? Because I need basically some jolt to the face to get out of my own fucking brain so I can go on stage and do the thing that I'm supposed to do. And it's so beautiful because you see that she has all of these skills already inside to learn to cope with it a bit more. But then still things can be so incredibly overwhelming that actually she still can't. So she's always teetering somewhere on the verge of not quite enough or not quite strong enough for all the things she has to face, but then actually always living up to it and doing it at the very end.
Yeah, also with the help of other people.
Yes.
I think her character has a way of asking for help that is very funny and sometimes deeply sad, because you can tell the signs of depression that are there lingering under the surface, but she longs for connection and for help. And you can tease out that character backstory, of having been left at a young age, no dad, growing up with a sister and a mom, and needing that connection with somebody who isn't there. So I feel like there's something kind of childish that comes out of her at these moments, but at the same time, a lot of people, and there are a few scenes in the theater with people treat her like she's fragile, which I think is also quite telling about her backstory and about that impossibility to be successful woman artist and actually be in your body and inhabit that in your skin and project it, and she cannot do it like her father does.
Yeah, but then the funny thing is, of course, or the ironic thing, I'd rather say, that we see that the father to some degree is suffering much more because he went through life being very successful, removing himself also successfully basically from his family in this process. But then now he finds himself at a stage in life where he actually really needs his daughters for multiple reasons, some of them personal and emotional, some of them also artistic. But we see that he's to some degree suffering much and much more because his disconnect with his family becomes very tangible and strongly. A most telling and very funny scene, I think some people thought it was too much, but I thought it was brilliant, is when his grandson's 9th birthday is happening.
Yes, please.
So this is his daughter, the sister of our protagonist. Her boy becomes 9 years old and he shows up for the birthday party and gives him a package of a couple of DVDs for his birthday, and the DVDs are incredible. We have Irreversible by Gaspar Noé, and we have The Piano Teacher by Michael Haneke. And about Irreversible, he says, and remind you, this kid is 9 years old, right? Monica Bellucci, what a woman. And about The Piano Teacher by Haneke, a very grim film starring Isabelle Huppert. He says, this film will teach you a lot about female relationship or having a relationship with a woman.
Absolutely insane. The cinema cracking up
Yes.
completely.
This is such a Ken in-crowd joke as well, right?
Yeah.
I'm very curious to see how it translates to more local theaters, but I think the audience in Lab 111 will definitely appreciate this kind of cinephile in-jokes that the film also has.
Yeah, and also the film festival scene that happens earlier in the film. There's a little bit of our protagonist having a retrospective of his films at Deauville Festival for American Cinema in France. It's like a beautiful, kind of reminds you of a mixture of Cannes and Venice. It's a beautiful scene at the beach that he goes on drinking with a Hollywood actress that is played by Elle Fanning.
Great. Yes.
Absolutely adorable, beautiful scene that is very recognizable for us, I think, as film festival goers. But at the same time, it satirizes it in a very, very sweet way that anyone who hasn't been to a film festival or is not interested in that kind of, line of work can actually see for what it is. It'd be like, okay, these people take themselves too seriously, but occasionally they have fun and they connect and they can collaborate, which is what happens to those two later in the film.
Well, I think this is a good segue to go to Sirat, which is one of my favorite films here this week on the Croisette, because the films Sentimental Value and Sirat are, I would say, completely different types of cinema, but what they do share is a flexibility and a fluidity in the way that the director is able to navigate different modes, different, let's say, tones, different styles slightly, and that the film just kind of like gradually morphs more into the thing that it wants to say about human behavior. Sirat, it takes a completely different approach. Here we have a film by Óliver Laxe, who is a Spanish filmmaker who has made multiple films in the Moroccan desert close to the Atlas Mountains. Films of a very, let's say, elemental nature, where he's very keen on capturing the hardships of people traveling to, let's say, more extreme natural environments like mountains and deserts to try to probe basically a more existential elemental battle that humanity has to fight within themselves, right?
Yeah, and a spiritual quest, right?
Exactly, a spiritual quest. Man against nature, but also maybe man through nature against themselves.
Exactly.
And in this film, to set the scene a little bit more, let's say, clearly, the film opens with a bunch of guys in bare shirt who are setting up all of these insane speakers for a rave in the desert. Then the rave starts. Incredibly pounding music by techno legend Kandin Ray. Amazing score. It already has this strong sense of some vérité cinema. You know, the camera is just there observing people actually raving. It feels like a proper nasty desert rave. And then enter the frame is a father and a son who are looking for their missing daughter/sister, who is supposedly maybe on this rave. So they go through this partying crowd with flyers in their hand, missing flyers. Have you seen our daughter? Have you seen my sister? This and that. She's not there, but they meet people that might know a different rave farther into the desert where she might be. And that sets off an insane quest deep into the heartland of the desert, deep into the country. Also, supposedly against the backdrop of World War III, a lot of grim things are happening in the world, as it is also happening in our world, by the way. But all of these things slowly pass to the background, and then what gets foregrounded is this elemental quest, this spiritual journey. It's a completely different type of cinema, and that's the nice schizophrenic and beautiful thing about Cannes. So, Savina, what did you think of Sirat? Because this is a film that I will be thinking about a lot in the time to come.
The film opens with this title card explaining us the meaning of Sirat,
Yes.
which is in Muslim tradition the bridge that separates paradise and hell, and it's a place of encounters of the soul where the soul interrogates itself where to go, right? And I remember thinking, okay, it's good that at least there is a bridge between heaven and hell.
Yes.
That's a good start, right? They're separated, but also they're connected by this bridge, and I think that was a very nice into the film for me as well, because I hadn't seen any of the director's previous work, so I was really stunned by that grasp on form, the storytelling. That I don't know. It's a form that really translates that internal quest in a way. It's a lot of observation, but also there's a lot of afflicting sound design. There's the film lures you in, but then attacks you in the most pleasant way possible. I think
Yeah.
it really it's a very surprising film. It works in very surprising ways, even though it's an archetypal story, right?
Yes.
There's a search, there are helpers,
Yes.
all these figures of of fairy tales and myths are there along the way, but I think towards the middle the film drastically changes
Exactly.
to the way that it just left me there mesmerized.
It's so interesting, and in a sense, it has some Herzogian qualities, right? This mission into the nature, stripping everything basically down to its most basic, let's say, skeletal aspect.
Oh
Just only
yes.
a couple of people in the desert. But then, where Herzog has this kind of maybe, I would say, violent perspective, about nature and about human nature as well. I feel like Laxe approaches it with much more, let's say, spiritual clarity and much more empathy for the people within the film.
Certainly.
And which is really nice because what he really tries to do is elevate everything in the film constantly to this spiritual dimension. He's very interested in these horizontal vistas, but also in these, let's say, vertical perspectives that split it, and the impossibility of these landscapes then to still find poetry within them and see how that gets reflected back into, let's say, the humanity of the people in the central story.
Yeah, exactly, and that is well amplified by the blasting techno music
Yes.
that is embedded in the soundtrack. It makes an appearance both diegetically and non-diegetically. The characters dance to it. It has a narrative purpose, the music, and it's so loud, as well as the sound design with a lot of noise and drones, and it's a very interesting way to think about music and that specific kind of music in a spiritual sense.
He said, I interviewed him this week, and I said, speaking about the music, that at first he wanted it to be very like full and tribalistic and kind of like with such deep roots that you can immediately connect it to something ancient and a thing that can connect all human beings, which is often what people try to find at the rave, right? Some collective sense of connectedness. But then he wanted to strip it down further and further and further until basically the sounds just only become like some washing drone, some like lingering synthesizer, or these little bits of sharp arpeggios, which he explained should sound like the first sounds that have ever occurred on the planet Earth. So it goes back to something, stripping it down to its bare core, right? Which is a process, when done well in cinema, is for me the most fascinating thing to behold if a director manages to do that.
Yeah, and I think it's good to say that the film is not unnecessarily formalistic. Like
No.
we've talked about that, but also at the same time there is a purity of the characters that they just get to know each other only through the obstacles they go through together. So there's nothing, no crutches, no outside world even. Everybody is being completely themselves, and that's a very unique kind of encounter that is not idealized, that it's sometimes on these kind of road movies, quote unquote, you expect people to turn on against each other, you expect something bad to happen, but this film, even though it's very surprising in the way it handles its narrative, really testifies to that. It's possible for people to meet each other on the deep spiritual level,
Yeah.
even without making a proper pilgrimage on purpose.
Exactly. And we can say bad things happen in the film. As a matter of fact, a lot of tragedies occur, but they come in such an unexpected ways that I think also it would be good to not explore them too strongly.
Yes.
Well, Savina, these are two of our favorite films. We're recording as of today on the last day of the competition, so tomorrow will be the award ceremony. Is there any film that you would hope wins the Golden Palm? Now we're still in the predicting chair.
That's a good thing. I'll be very happy if either Sirat or Sentimental Value wins.
That's why we
That
picked
would be
them.
fantastic.
Yes.
I would love that. What about you? Anything I'm missing?
Well, I've seen the Begon's Resurrection yesterday, which is, I mean, we could use an entire hour to talk about it, but it's a movie, it's a cinephiles movie. It's an insane, demented, let's say, trip through film history filtered in such extreme genre exercises. It's so kaleidoscopic and dense with ideas, with dreams, with characters, with shots, with visual flourishes. It's a lot. It's overwhelming. It's incredibly beautiful. I think it's too outré to win, but I would love to see it kind of like get recognized for the special little gem at the festival that it is. But that's something that we'll discuss later because you haven't seen it yet.
Yes, can't wait. It really sounds super promising.
For now, we're sending everybody, to our listeners, lots of love from the French Riviera. we hope that all of these films that we discuss will find your way to you soon. And Savina, most of all, thank you so much for joining us and celebrating cinema, and we'll hope to have you back soon.
Extreme pleasure. Thank you very much.